My grandson Matthew's words pierced me like tiny needles. I froze, the glass of water trembling in my wrinkled hands, watching the two 12-year-olds, completely oblivious to my presence. The party hall buzzed with laughter and loud music, celebrating my granddaughter Brittany's 15th birthday. But for me, in that moment, all sound simply vanished. "Your grandma seems nice," his friend offered. "Yeah, that's Grandma Susan," Matthew whispered, a quick glance over his shoulder. "She shouldn't even be here. My mom only invited her because Dad twisted his arm." I drew a shallow breath, swallowing the burning knot in my throat. 70 years on this earth, and nothing had ever prepared me for words like those. I retreated to my empty table in the hall's furthest corner, the one no one touched, and sank into the chair, my back screaming. The party swirled on. Jennifer, my daughter-in-law, glided through the guests in her flawless blue dress, dispensing practiced smiles. My son, David, slapped the backs of Brittany's friends' parents, playing the convivial host. And me? I was the fixture in the corner, wheeled out only when someone needed a purse held or a few minutes of childcare for the little ones. You must be wondering, how does a grandmother get here? How does the family matriarch become so expendable? Let me tell you, it began 6 months ago. David's promotion. Suddenly, our Sunday pot roast dinners, a tradition stretching back years, became complicated to slot into their packed schedule. The weekday phone calls thinned. "We're just so busy, Mom." The endless refrain. My apartment, once vibrant with weekend voices and laughter, fell silent. The photographs on the walls seemed to watch me, ghosts of a past that wouldn't return. Brittany, who used to spend entire afternoons with me, flower on her nose, lost in my stories, now only materialized when her budget for new clothes or friend outings ran dry. 3 months ago, hearing about Brittany's party, I offered my help. "I can make the treats, Jennifer. You know Grandma's chocolate fudge bites were always Britt's favorite," I offered on the phone. "Oh, Mrs. Susan, you truly don't need to trouble yourself," Jennifer replied, her voice perfectly modulated, politely distant. "We've already engaged a full catering service. It's quite extensive, and we truly wouldn't want to impose." Even so, the day before, I arrived at their apartment, a tray of homemade chocolate fudge bites clutched in my hands. Jennifer opened the door, her expression a careful blend of surprise and irritation. "Mrs. Susan, we weren't expecting you today." "I came to help with the preparations," I stated, lifting the tray. "And I brought Britt's favorites." "You truly needn't have," she said, taking the tray, placing it pointedly on the kitchen counter, well away from the other perfectly arranged goodies. "Everything is quite under control." David materialized in the living room, absorbed in a phone call. He offered a quick, distracted wave, never breaking his conversation, then vanished down the hall. Brittany didn't even stir from her room to acknowledge me. "Can I help set anything up?" I asked, gesturing to the scattered boxes of decorations. "It's all meticulously planned, Mrs. Susan. The decorator arrives first thing tomorrow. You should preserve your energy for the party." The subtext was a hammer blow. I was superfluous. The day of the party, I arrived an hour early, dressed in my finest, the pearl necklace Charles, my husband, had given me for our silver anniversary, warm against my skin. I carried a special gift for Brittany, a delicate gold watch, once my mother's. The hall shimmered with pink and silver balloons, almost ready. Jennifer darted about, barking orders at the catering staff. When her eyes found me, she produced a fleeting smile. "So glad you're here, Mrs. Susan. Would you mind taking that table over there? Guests will be here any minute." I took my place alone at the designated table, the one exiled furthest from the center. I set Brittany's gift on the gift table and waited. Guests began to arrive. Jennifer's family first. Her parents were enveloped in effusive hugs, guided to the place of honor at the main table. Her aunts and cousins quickly filled the surrounding ones. I stayed alone. David strode past once, a fleeting touch to my shoulder. "Everything okay, Mom? Need anything?" Before I could respond, a voice called his name, and he vanished with a hollow, "Be right back." Brittany made her grand entrance, radiant in her pink dress. She posed for photos with her parents, her maternal grandparents, her circle of friends. Not once did her gaze stray towards my solitary corner. When I finally cornered her between songs, her smile was a brittle mask. "Hi, Grandma. Thanks for coming." She rattled off, eyes already scanning over my shoulder, searching for someone, anyone, more stimulating. "You look beautiful, my love, just like me when I was your age." I tried to grasp her hands, but she was already slipping away. "Gotta go. The girls are calling." It was moments later that I went for water and overheard Matthew's comment. My grandson's casual dismissal solidified what my heart had long whispered. I was an inconvenience, an obligation, a ghost who shouldn't even be there. I returned to my table, watching the party through newly opened eyes. I observed David and Jennifer with her parents. Unfettered laughter, lingering embraces, cherished family photos. For me, only perfunctory waves and polite distant smiles. I saw Brittany race to share something on her phone with her maternal grandmother, barely a flicker in my direction. When the happy birthday chorus swelled, I remained at the rear of the hall. Tears blurred my vision as their voices rang out. Brittany, a queen amidst her friends, blew out the candles, never once searching for me in the throng. Then, quietly, I picked up my purse and slipped away. No farewells. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me, no one noticed my absence. The taxi deposited me before my building. Joe, the doorman, met me with a furrowed brow. "Everything all right, Mrs. Susan? You look peaked." "Just weary, Joe. Parties simply aren't my scene anymore." In the elevator, I confronted my reflection. When had I become this phantom woman? When had my children and grandchildren ceased to see me as a person and begun to view me as a liability? Home. I sank into the armchair where I'd once rocked my babies. Memories flickered like an old film reel. David, feverish in my arms, my lullabies chasing away his tears. Marianne's first wobbly steps. She lives states away now, barely calls. The endless nights I'd spent by their bedsides, battling their illnesses. The sacrifices, after Charles passed, to secure their education. I remembered when David and Jennifer needed money for their apartment. I'd sold the family vacation home Charles had left me, our cherished weekend refuge. An investment in the family's future, I told myself then. A genuine thank you? It never came. I wept, a torrent of tears I hadn't shed in years. Not for their casual cruelty, but for the stark clarity that finally broke through. For so long I had tried to purchase their affection. With gifts, with money, with ceaseless availability. I'd sacrificed my own dreams, the travels I longed for, the very act of caring for myself. As the last tears dried, a profound shift began inside me. A dormant determination forgotten for decades, stirred and surged. I picked up the phone, dialing a number I rarely touched. Hello? Nancy, it's Susan, your sister. My younger sister, a widow like me, had found her peace years ago in St. Augustine. She'd always extended the invitation, beckoning me closer to her friends who'd built a vibrant support system, traveling companions. Susan! What a wonderful surprise! Everything all right? Yes, Nancy. Everything is finally clear. We spoke for nearly 2 hours. She painted a vivid picture of the quiet coastal life, the circle of friends she'd cultivated, the adventures they were planning. There's an empty apartment in my building, sis, right on the ocean. You'd adore the sunrises here. When I hung up, it was long past midnight, but sleep was a stranger. I walked to the room I'd perpetually kept ready for the grandkids' sleepovers, a gesture unreciprocated for over a year. I opened the closet and retrieved the shoebox of mementos, yellowed photos, painstakingly crafted Mother's Day cards, David's impossibly tiny first baby shoe. They don't remember any of it, I murmured to the silent room. That night, my decision solidified. At 70, I realized I still had a lifetime to reclaim, and that's precisely what I began to chart, while the family I'd loved so fiercely remained blissfully unaware of the tectonic shift unfolding. The next morning, armed with a resolve I hadn't felt in decades, I began to make calls. First to a real estate agent, then to a lawyer. It was time, finally, to claim myself. I gazed out my apartment window at the city that had always anchored me, and a quiet smile touched my lips. They believed I'd remain here forever, tucked away, invisible, convenient. They had no idea I was about to stage the most vital act of self-love of my entire life. 3 weeks drifted by since Brittany's party, and not a single family member called to check in. Not even David, who typically managed a perfunctory Sunday call. Perhaps they hadn't registered my early exit, or perhaps, the thought a deeper ache, they simply didn't care. The apartment, my home for decades, felt alien now. The walls that had absorbed so many stories seemed to regard me with quiet judgment. What are you still doing here, Susan? As I sorted through belongings, a shoebox in the back of the closet yielded yellowed letters. Charles's words to me, penned during our courtship. I sat on the bed's edge and opened one, dated 1968. The tears unbidden arrived. I remembered a Sunday, about 5 years back, when David, Jennifer, and the kids still graced my table for regular dinners. Brittany must have been 10, Matthew 7. I'd made my famous lasagna, everyone's perennial favorite. Grandma, tell us that story about how you and Grandpa met at the dance, Brittany coaxed as I served the apple pie. This story again, Mom. David rolled his eyes, a faint smile playing on his lips. I think we've heard it 1,000 times. But I like it, Brittany insisted, a romantic at heart. Jennifer, predictably, was glued to her phone, as always during our attempts at conversation. We really need to bolt right after lunch. I've got a decorator meeting at 4. Even so, I told the story. How Charles had seen me across the dance floor, a lighthouse in a sea of faces, and cut through the throng to ask me to dance. How he'd promptly stepped on my foot, flustered to the point of near flight. How, despite the ignominy, I'd seen a spark in his eyes that made me accept a second invitation. And that's how I knew he was the man for me. I concluded, my gaze finding David. Your dad was a charming klutz, but he possessed the kindest heart in the world. Brittany sighed, utterly enchanted. Matthew feigned disinterest, yet I caught his rapt attention. David seemed adrift in his own memories of his father, Grandma, Brittany asked suddenly, her voice smaller. Did you ever think about dating again after Grandpa passed? The question landed with an unexpected quietness. Jennifer finally lifted her eyes from her screen, a flicker of discomfort crossing her face. Brittany, what kind of question is that? David chided, his voice sharp. It's quite all right, I replied. It's a perfectly valid question. I looked at my granddaughter. I did, sweetie. Life's long, and sometimes the solitude can be heavy. But I never met anyone who made me feel the way your grandpa did. But aren't you afraid of being alone? Brittany pressed, a genuine concern in her young voice. David cut in quickly, a practiced reassurance. But she's not alone, Brittany. She has us. In that moment, I believed him. Believed I'd never be truly alone, not with my family. How profoundly mistaken I was. The realtor's call that Wednesday jarred me from my reverie. Mrs. Susan, I have spectacular news. We've received an offer for your asking price. The buyers are keen to close swiftly. My heart leapt. It was real. This was truly happening. How soon can we finalize? If you agree, we could sign the contract as early as next week. They're eager to move in as soon as humanly possible. I scanned the apartment, already pared down. I'd set aside only the essentials and a handful of old photographs, relics from when we were, genuinely, a family. The rest would be donated or sold. I accept the offer, I stated, a newfound steel in my voice. I kept it from David and the others. In those 3 weeks, my phone had remained mostly silent. When Marianne, my daughter in Denver, finally rang, it was merely to request old family recipes for a cookbook she was compiling. How are you, Mom? She asked, a perfunctory inquiry once her objective was met. I'm doing well, honey. Making some significant changes in my life. That's good, Mom. Look, I've got to run. The kids are home from school. She never even bothered to ask what those changes entailed. The morning I signed the sales contract, a peculiar mix of liberation and melancholy settled over me. The apartment, where I'd nurtured my children, shared a life with Charles, where every corner held a memory, would soon pass to strangers. Yet beneath the bittersweet ache, a thrill, dormant for years, surged within me. The sensation of seizing the reins of my own life. I called Nancy the moment I stepped out of the notary's office. It's done, sis. The apartment is sold. Susan, that's incredible. When are you coming? 2 weeks. Enough time to finalize everything and ship what I'm taking. I absolutely cannot wait. The ladies are beyond excited to meet you. We're planning a welcome lunch. The ladies were Nancy's circle of friends, all widows like us, all navigating their 60s and 70s. Women who, like me, had decided to reinvent their futures. You won't regret it, my sister promised, her voice radiating warmth. Life here is entirely different. Just yesterday, we watched the sunrise on the beach, then had coffee at this charming new French bakery. Next week, we're hitting a senior dance at the club. A dance, just like the one where I'd met Charles. Perhaps life was indeed offering me a perfect, poignant full circle. Chris appeared at my door 2 days later without warning. His face was drawn tight, brows furrowed, a familiar expression that echoed Charles's annoyance. Mom, we need to talk. I invited him in. He halted mid-living room, taking in the stacked boxes and the skeletal spaces where furniture and memories once stood. What in God's name is going on here? The building manager's friends with Jennifer's dad. He mentioned you sold the apartment. I offered coffee. He dismissed it with an impatient wave. It's true, honey. I sold the apartment. What do you mean? Why didn't you consult us? This apartment is part of our inheritance. That word, inheritance, hit me like a physical blow. Not your home, not your memories, but our inheritance. As if I were merely the temporary custodian of something already earmarked for them. Because it's mine, Chris. Just like my life. Chris ran a hand through his hair, exasperated. Mom, you can't just make decisions like this. Alone, at your age. Where are you going to live? Have you even considered that? I'm moving to St. Augustine to live near Aunt Nancy. St. Augustine? Across the country? Away from family? I nearly laughed at the sheer bitter irony. What family, Chris? The one who hasn't bothered to visit me in months? The one who relegates me to a corner at gatherings? The one who thinks I shouldn't even be there? He looked genuinely perplexed. What are you talking about? I heard your son at Brittany's party. He told his little friend I shouldn't even be there, that I was only invited because you insisted. Chris's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. Mom, they're just kids. They don't think before they speak. Kids often echo what they hear at home, Chris. He sat down, a sudden weariness settling on him. Look, Mom, things have been complicated. Work, the kids' school, Jennifer's social commitments. We haven't exactly had a surplus of time. Time is always a choice, Chris. We all operate within the same 24 hours. It's a question of where your priorities lie. A heavy silence descended. Chris stared at his hands, avoiding my gaze. And the money from the sale, you'll need it to support yourself. There it was again. The immediate leap to finances, never to my well-being. A significant portion will go towards purchasing an apartment in St. Augustine. The remainder is for me to live my life precisely as I see fit. But what if you need medical care? What if you... Chris. I cut him off, my voice steady. I nurtured you for decades. I cared for your father when he fell ill. I looked after your grandmother until her final breath. Now, I'm going to care for myself. He rose, agitated. This can't be an impulsive decision, Mom. Let's discuss it further. Calmly, rationally. The decision has been made. I leave in 2 weeks. Chris departed, promising to return with Jennifer to resolve this. He did not. 3 days later, he called, claiming they were swamped with an event at Matthew's school. The following week, an unexpected guest. Brittany appeared alone, straight from school. Grandma, can I come in? She seemed softer. Less the distant teenager from the party, more the small girl who'd once burrowed into my lap. Her gaze swept the half-empty apartment. Is it true you're leaving? It is, sweetie. She sank onto the couch, the only piece of furniture yet to be moved. Why? I sat beside her. Because it's time for me to choose myself, Brittany. To live what remains of my life on my own terms. But what about us? Aren't you going to miss us? The question landed, surprisingly raw. Of course I'd miss them. The idea of them. The family we could have been. I'll miss you terribly, Brittany. But sometimes, distance offers clarity. She lowered her eyes. It's because of the party, isn't it? I saw you slip out early. It's not just that party, sweetie. It's a lifetime of little parties. Countless small moments accumulating over the years. Brittany sat in silence for a while, absently tugging at the edge of her school uniform blouse. Remember when I was little and we'd bake cakes together? Of course I do. You always insisted on licking the chocolate spoon clean. She smiled, a genuine, wistful curve of her lips. "And you always let me, even when Mom said it was bad for me. Some rules are made to be bent, darling, especially between grandmas and grandkids." Another silence. Then, unexpectedly, she leaned in and hugged me. A tight, fervent embrace, the kind we hadn't shared in years. "I'm sorry, Grandma, for everything." I didn't press for specifics. I simply held her close, inhaling the scent of her shampoo, engraving that feeling into my memory. "Can I come visit you in St. Augustine?" "Of course you can. I'll have a special room just for you." When Brittany departed, she left an even larger hollow in the apartment. But she also left a fragile seed of hope. Perhaps with distance and the passage of time, we could cultivate something new, something truly authentic. In the days that followed, I meticulously finalized the move. I composed letters to each of my children and grandchildren, words I might never articulate face to face. For Brittany, I wove in family stories she'd never heard. For Matthew, a special envelope held a simple message. When you feel lost, remember you always have the right to choose where you truly belong. With love, Grandma Susan. Chris called a few times, our conversations terse, strained. He oscillated between pleading with me to stay and accusing me of abandoning them. In our final call, a lifetime of unspoken resentments finally erupted. "Abandoning? Chris, look back. Tell me, honestly, who abandoned whom first?" The hollow silence on the other end served as his damning answer. The day before my departure, I made one last pilgrimage to the cemetery where Charles rested. I brought daisies, his favorite, and sat on the weathered bench before his headstone. "I'm leaving, old man," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I know you'd understand. You always said I was braver than I knew." A gentle breeze rustled the leaves overhead. I could almost hear Charles's laugh, that joyous sound that crinkled his eyes into nearly invisible slits. "Remember our first dance? You stepped on my foot so hard, I thought I'd never want to dance again. But the very next week, there you were, asking me out. 'I practiced all week,' you said, and you really had." I smiled at the vivid memory. Charles was no Fred Astaire, but he compensated with boundless enthusiasm and unwavering dedication. "I'm going to dance again, Charles. Nancy said there are dances for our age group in St. Augustine. I doubt I'll find anyone as delightfully clumsy as you, but who knows?" I lingered there for nearly an hour, conversing with my husband as if he sat beside me. I recounted selling the apartment, Chris's reaction, Brittany's unexpected hug. I spoke of my fears and my burgeoning hopes for this new chapter. When I finally stood to leave, a lightness settled over me, a sensation I hadn't known in years, as if Charles himself had bestowed his quiet blessing. "Until we meet again, my love. You'll always be with me, no matter where I roam." My last night in the apartment felt strangely serene. I slept on a mattress on the floor, my bed long since donated. My bag stood sentinel by the door. The next day, the last remaining furniture would be collected by charity. I woke before dawn, brewing simple coffee in the near-empty kitchen. I perched on the windowsill, watching the city slowly stir to life. The first buses, the news deliveries, lights kindling in neighboring apartments. For a fleeting moment, I wavered. Was I truly ready to shed everything? To embark on a new beginning at 70? Then Matthew's whispered words echoed. She shouldn't even be here. Yes, I was ready. Because I'd finally understood there were places I should be. Places I longed to be. Places where I would be cherished not for what I could offer, but simply for who I was. The intercom buzzed at 7 sharp. My airport driver. "I'm coming down," I answered. I took one last lingering look at the hollow apartment. So many memories, so many untold stories. But life isn't defined solely by what we relinquish. It's shaped primarily by what we choose to carry forward, and by what glorious unknowns still await. I grasped my bags, then turned and walked out, not looking back. The airport buzzed with 1,000 transient narratives that Thursday morning. Families embracing goodbyes, executives rushing to distant cities, young backpackers alight with adventure. And me, a 70-year-old woman, stepping into the grandest adventure of my life. As I shuffled forward in the boarding line, a voice called my name. I turned, Chris breathless as if he'd run the entire way. "Mom! Thank heavens I caught you!" I regarded him, surprised. "What are you doing here, Chris?" "I couldn't just let you leave like this." He looked genuinely distraught. "I spent all night replaying everything we discussed. You're right. I failed you." This was unexpected. Chris had always worn his pride like a shield, rarely acknowledging fault. "I didn't come to stop you," he continued, his voice rough. "I came to tell you I respect your decision, and that I'm so incredibly sorry. For everything." The line moved. I moved with it. Chris kept pace, walking beside me. "Can I come visit you there, with the kids?" "Of course you can, honey. I would love to have you all." He pulled me into a hug then, a crushing embrace, raw and deep, unlike any he'd given me in years. "I love you, Mom. Always have." "I love you too, Chris. That will never change." When we parted, his eyes were wet. I reached up, cupping his cheek, just as I had when he was a small boy needing solace. "This isn't goodbye, son. It's simply until next time." And perhaps it's precisely what we all need. A little distance to truly appreciate what we have. The gate agent called my seat number, my cue to depart. "Give my love to Jennifer and the kids," I said, picking up my bag. "I will, and we'll talk the moment you land." I offered a final wave before stepping onto the jet bridge. I didn't look back again. My heart, against the threat of tears, felt astonishingly light. The flight to St. Augustine, barely 2 hours, felt like a passage between worlds. As the plane began its long descent, I gazed out the window, mesmerized by the intense blue of the ocean embracing the coastline. My new home. Nancy was waiting at baggage claim, flanked by 2 beaming women I soon recognized as Doris and Eleanor, her inseparable companions. "Welcome to your new life, sis," Nancy exclaimed, pulling me into a fierce hug. The 3 of them enveloped me with contagious exuberance, whisking my bags away, peppering me with questions, laughing freely. Doris, an elegant woman with a cascade of silver hair, linked her arm through mine as we walked to the parking garage. "You are going to adore it here, Susan." The 3 of us desperately needed some fresh blood in the coven, someone up for our absolutely madcap ideas. "Madcap ideas," I echoed, intrigued. Eleanor, the shortest and most delightfully plump, let out a conspiratorial chuckle. "Last week we convinced Nancy to take stand-up paddleboarding lessons. And she tumbled so many times, we thought she'd single-handedly drain the bay." Doris chimed in, igniting a fresh explosion of laughter. Nancy feigned outrage. "Traitors! You weren't supposed to spill that yet." We piled into Doris's car. a compact red sedan she navigated with surprising dexterity for her 72 years. During the drive to the condo, they painted a vibrant picture of their established routine. Invigorating morning walks on the beach, boisterous ballroom dancing lessons on Tuesdays, a thoughtful book club on Thursdays, and their coveted Saturdays, designated Adventure Day, a time to try something entirely new. Last week was paddleboarding. The week before, ceramic painting. Before that, we attempted a Japanese restaurant where you sit on the floor, Nancy recounted, giggling. We could barely unfold ourselves afterward, but it was worth every single groan. More laughter, warm and unforced. I found myself laughing along, swept up in their easygoing joy. The condo Nancy had helped me secure was in her same building, 2 floors above. Smaller than my old place, yes, but the sweeping ocean view rendered any drawback irrelevant. Generous windows invited the golden, late afternoon light, illuminating the light wood floor. "What do you think?" my sister asked, her anticipation palpable. I walked to the balcony and inhaled deeply, savoring the briny air. In the distance, the sun began its stately descent towards the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and delicate pinks. "It's perfect," I replied, a profound emotion stirring within me, one I couldn't quite name. It wasn't just happiness or mere relief. It was something far deeper, the undeniable sensation of being precisely where I was meant to be. That night, the 4 of us dined on Nancy's balcony. We feasted on fresh seafood, sipped chilled white wine, and conversed like old friends reunited after a lifetime. They shared their narratives, how Doris had embarked on a solo grand tour of Europe at 65 after her husband's passing, how Eleanor, after raising 5 children, had shed her large family home for a cozy apartment near the shore, how Nancy had discovered painting, a conduit for emotions she hadn't known she possessed. Stories of women who, like me, had chosen to believe there was still vibrant life to be lived, bold choices to be made, and profound joys yet to be unearthed. When I returned to my new condo, still a canvas of empty space save for the mattress and a few bags, I felt no solitude. For the first time in a very long time, I felt utterly, beautifully accompanied by possibility. I sat on the balcony with a cup of tea, watching the city lights shimmer on the ocean. Tomorrow my belongings would arrive. Tomorrow I'd begin to shape my new home. Tomorrow I'd take the first deliberate steps on this uncharted journey. But that night, simply existing felt like enough. Just breathing the salty air, listening to the distant lull of the waves, and knowing I had finally, truly chosen myself. I remembered the words I'd written for Matthew. When you feel like you're in the wrong place, remember you always have the right to choose where you want to be. I smiled up at the vast, starry canvas above. I had chosen, and I was exactly where I was meant to be.